Zephyr and Tartarus are shown. Tartarus, the demon god, commends Zephyr, the final survivor, and tells him how no one has troubled him this much in a long time. Tartarus then makes an offer that Zephyr should work under him, but he gets tricked into grabbing Zephyr's hand, who pretends to be accepting the offer. Zephyr explodes due to a spell. This destroys Tartarus's hand and gets him very angry. Zephyr dies and wakes up before Angel Mercedes on the lowest floor of the Pantheon where the gods reside. She tells him that the gods are interested in him and want to send him back to the past so he could change the future. The only condition is that he will retain all his memories but lose all his present abilities. The gods would also give him some abilities in the form of returner privileges to show their support. Zephyr agrees. He plans to avenge his loved ones and destroy the gods who do not value humanity. He gets sent back to when he was a slave of the temple 10 years ago. Zephyr continues to test his perks in the mine. The first perk is Will of Iron, which helps to improve his defense power and endurance. This perk surprisingly helps him defend himself against the captain's whip. He also uses this perk to boost his mining productivity, which earns his team first place. Miners worship Aria, the goddess of light, but Zephyr sees this as trash. The temple of Aria saves humans but also keeps them as slaves till they pay up their huge medical bills. If Zephyr must be free, he has to pay up all his debts. He is determined to destroy Tartarus and protect Altair this time. He then thinks of a way to join the hunter team so he could earn more from the dungeons. Zephyr meets the 3-man monster hunting reconnaissance squad. 4 men, including Zephyr, enter the dungeon for reconnaissance with a magical wristband given to them by the waiting squad to indicate if there's trouble and if they need backup. They successfully trap and kill some monsters using the hazelnut plant, and then decide to employ the same approach to getting the other kobold monsters. However, a more ferocious monster known as Predator emerges and hurts everyone except Zephyr. Zephyr then attempts to fight Predator using Goad's spear and a combination of his perks. He activates the third perk, Silver Key. Fear, a skill used by Predator against its prey, paralyzes the reconnaissance team's captain, but Zephyr utilizes the Dragon Soul plant he got using his third perk to neutralize the fear. Zephyr then gets Venom King Fade's 70-second venom, also using the third perk, and pours it on the spear. He then attacks Predator with it. However, it would take 3 minutes for the venom to fully have its effect on the monster. Predator strikes Zephyr with its tail, which sends him flying. Zephyr stands up, provokes the Predator, and throws the whole bottle of the venom in its mouth. He then begins to rain several attacks on it. He finally delivers the ultimate blow with his heightened magic, which he got from drinking several bottles of the recovery water. Zephyr follows the captain of the reconnaissance team Goath to the Department of Human Resources to fill out a hunter nomination form. Then a flashback shows when the captain and Zephyr chatted in the dungeon. Zephyr asks the captain not to report the presence of the Predator, and only reports the kobold monsters instead because the temple claims ownership of anything taken by temple slaves. The hunters only get to earn minor bonuses, while the temple takes all the items. Zephyr plans to sell the Predator to brokers to make more money so he can leave the temple as soon as possible. In exchange, he offers to help promote the captain by fighting more monsters in future dungeon raids. Zephyr also aims to participate in the Great Raid with the Temple Knights, scheduled to happen within the next month, as that's where an item that would shake the entire continent would be found. A piece of information he has because he came from the future. Zephyr and the captain then head to the supply depot for supplies, and there they meet the team of heresy examiners, higher-ranked slaves who are known to kill people without reason. Sahakub notices Zephyr and begins to interrogate him. His instincts tell him there's something unnatural about Zephyr, and believes he is a high-level expert dressed like a miner. Sahaku tells Zephyr that he must answer the questions he will be asking him, and then asks Zephyr about the demon god worshippers. Zephyr knows about demon god worshippers better than anyone else, but he refuses to answer and then asks Sahaku that they change locations because of the many people watching, so that if anything unfortunate happens, Sahaku would still retain his honor before everyone. Sahaku ignores this and launches an attack at Zephyr, using his red field skill, which boosts teammates' abilities. Zephyr combats them with an unusual martial art technique and defeats the team of heresy examiners effortlessly. The fight's outcome amazes everyone. Zephyr leaves the scene and begins to think of what the next step of his plan is, having finished one step already. Suddenly, he begins to experience mana freezing. He had exhausted his mana from the technique he used in the just concluded fight. Then comes the Spirit Shylock to begin the collection process, which happens when the user's Man of the Wall of Iron skill has reached 0. Just as Spirit Shylock tries to begin the collection, Zephyr, who was already prepared for the situation, uses the emergency recovery potion. This boosts his mana, thus stopping the collection process. User gets very angry. Zephyr then wakes up and finds himself tied to a bed in a room. A clergy sister, threatening with a knife, yells at him and tells him that his loans are overdue by an hour, and they would be collecting his organs as agreed. Zephyr tries to calm the situation by talking with her, but she orders that her henchman cut one of his fingers. Zephyr then calls her by her name, which causes her to order the henchman to stop. She orders the men out of the room and asks Zephyr how he knows her true identity. White Rose, a monster broker with underworld connections. Zephyr then starts to negotiate with her regarding the predator. Sahaku wakes up angry in the hospital and begins to cause a scene. Sir Ned arrives at the scene and tells Sahaku how much shame he brought to them and threatens to kill him. Sahaku asks for a second chance, and Sir Ned gives him an item gotten from a demon god worshipper captured in the past. He tells him to use it to kill those that brought them shame. Sir Ned has ulterior motives and is just using Sahaku to avoid the suspicions of the knights towards him. He is a disciple of a demon god worshipper official. The Renaissance squad sits at a table to celebrate the newbie Zephyr, but Dale and Marco seem not to trust him. Zephyr takes out a bottle of alcohol he got from White Rose to lighten the atmosphere, as slaves can't afford such luxury. Zephyr believes he can help Goth become better since he knew him in his previous life, but he doesn't know what to do with the other two as they weren't alive at this point in his previous life. They then go to Cave Town Edeline on a dungeon raid. Zephyr uses his mana detection to detect the presence of steel monster spiders and tells the team the plans on how to kill them. However, Dale, because he dislikes Zephyr, counters him saying they can't clear out the monsters. He thinks Zephyr is a scammer who has ulterior and selfish motives. He then mistakenly touches a spider's web, waking up the spiders. Zephyr pulls Dale away and prepares to combat the monsters. A spider tries to bite his arm but couldn't, and then he punches it away. Zephyr then calls his teammates to come close, and he instructs them on how to kill the spiders. He tells them to cover their blades with items of clothing so they could easily deflect the spiders' webs, which can't be done with the blades. Dale wonders how Zephyr knows all these. Zephyr kills many spiders while the others manage to kill just one. The teammates would then ask him what he used to do before, which gave him this much skill and experience. After a while, Zephyr tells them that they have to leave the dungeon. Marco and Dale try to persuade Zephyr that having them around will be useful, but Goth doesn't want to risk his life. He has always played it safe all his life. Zephyr clarifies that he is sending them out because he has specific roles for them. Zephyr goes further into the dungeon to meet the Queen Spider, and at the entrance, he meets the Night Spiders who are responsible for protecting the Queen Spider. He summons some flour with a silver key and throws it at them. He then shoots poisoned arrows at the Night Spiders, causing an explosion when they mix with the flour. This is called the principle of dust explosion. Zephyr then plans to lure the Queen Spider outside the dungeon so they can attack it together and defeat it as a team. They all begin to combat the Queen Spider, with Zephyr taking the lead, while the others cause damage to the spider from behind. Zephyr avoids all the Queen Spider's attacks while causing some damage to her by using the spider's legs as weapons. The Queen Spider gets enraged because they dared to harm her eggs, and then she decides to melt all of them with her poison. But before she can, Zephyr reaches her poison gland and ties it, thus preventing her from releasing poison. They finally defeat the Queen Spider and they all celebrate. Dale realizes that with Zephyr as their leader, he can always win, so he starts to respect him accordingly. Zephyr returns with black steel spiders and gives them to Sister White Rose. He is amused by how she is carrying out shady deals in broad daylight inside the temple. She gives Zephyr lab clothes and an entrance pass so he could have access to the lab after everyone is off work. Ned comes to where Zephyr and Sister White Rose are, requesting to speak with Sister White Rose. Zephyr is surprised that he could meet Ned so soon. Anyways, Sister White Rose knows that Ned came because of Zephyr and not her. Ned and Zephyr soon begin to assault each other with magic, but Sister White Rose quickly stops them using Slave's Engravement, a right given to followers of light to apply a mark of a slave. She slaps Zephyr and takes him away, warning him that Ned is very dangerous. Zephyr then hurriedly leaves for the lab. Ned is sad that he could be controlled by the power of Slave Engravement that way. He had to bear the mark so he can carry out the mission as an undercover agent for the demon worshippers. Sahaku invades a village of about 50 people with demons, which he summons with the hypnos ocarina, a demon flute. He is determined to kill Zephyr for the humiliation he caused him. Zephyr prepares some poison using the queen spider's poison. He goes to White Rose's room and uses the poison with the acupuncture needles he got from the Arkan tree's wood to boost his abilities. However, it is a dangerous procedure, and he could die if anything goes wrong. Some hunters are being attacked by monster creatures in a forest, and they shoot a red flare to call for reinforcements from the temple. Zephyr suddenly appears as the monsters are about to kill the last survivor and single-handedly kills all the monsters. He asks where the nest of the monsters is and heads there to kill all the other monsters. He returns with the boss monster's head. Zephyr is now more powerful than ever. The acupuncture procedure worked after all. Zephyr is already gaining the attention of Matthias Grimmer, the senior heresy examiner, and Lucius Termetti, the head of the Temple Knights. They know what Zephyr wants is to participate in the raid, which is in about 20 days. Lucius takes Matthias to a room where he shows him the new equipment he just got, the Spear of Brilliant Light and the Winged Shield of Michael. He plans to use them in the raid to get rid of the boss in the boss room. White Rose gives Zephyr the Ring of Purification, which helps mana circulation and increases magic defense. She plans to make money off Zephyr, and so is willing to give him any equipment he wants. After a while, the reconnaissance team receives an emergency order form asking them to set off to a location immediately to analyze the situation there. However, Zephyr, thinking it's a message from Ned, and hoping that Ned would help him enter the upcoming raid party, quickly runs off to the location only to meet Sahaku there. Zephyr runs to attack Sahaku as he talks, but Zephyr soon gets surprised to see Sahaku summon Shoggoth. Shoggoth is an artificial demon created to help eliminate other humans easily. Shoggoth begins to feed on Zephyr's body and corrupt his mind. But suddenly he uses the curse removal power of the Ring of Purification he got from White Rose. He then runs over to clutch Sahaku's throat and attacks him with a skill known as Dragon's Roar. Zephyr kills Sahaku and obliterates Shoggoth by playing a particular chord with the demon flute. Ned comes to the scene, surprised that Zephyr can play the song, as it is a secret in the demon cult. Zephyr plans to deceive Ned into believing that he is also a demon worshipper, as that's the only way he can change the future and avenge his loved ones. They soon begin to fight, and Zephyr easily counters all Ned's attacks using the Dragon King-style secret art. Ned is surprised as only himself and his elder brother, successors to the executive rank of the demon cult, know secret art. He then begins to ask Zephyr who he is, to which Zephyr replies that he is a shadow apprentice who is trained for when any of the successors dies. Zephyr talks about demon worshippers' top secrets, which he shouldn't normally know about, to convince Ned that he's one of them, and was sent by the Master. Ned, still suspicious, finally believes Zephyr when he mentions blood tears, a stolen treasure of Ned's family by the temple. Ned takes Zephyr to an abandoned building near the temple where the other demon worshippers, who are to be the members of the raid party, are gathered. Matthias Grimmer is the head of the group and their goal is to steal the dragon heart. Ned is determined to be the one who steals the dragon heart and not Zephyr. Zephyr reveals that it was Ned that taught him the Dragon King-style secret art in his previous life, and is hoping to use him as a tool in overcoming what will happen in the future. The next day, the names of the raid party members are announced, and Zephyr has to leave the reconnaissance team to join the other raid party members. The reconnaissance team is so grateful for all he did for them. Zephyr goes to meet White Rose to check the new equipment he requested in preparation for the raid. Angela, an enchanter from the Research Institute, comes in to enchant the equipment to make them more powerful. Zephyr, having no money, offers to pay White Rose with the poisons of Belial and Zagan, which White Rose eagerly accepts. The raid party members begin intensive training in preparation for the raid. Ned and Zephyr work in harmony to complete their training. On the last night of the training, after about 2 weeks, Zephyr and Ned discuss, and Ned asks Zephyr how much he knows about him. Zephyr replies that Ned is asking the wrong question and tells him he should be asking where the blood tears is, and who has it instead. Zephyr tells Ned that he will tell him about it. There's a flashback to when Ned was young, with his father. The demonic sword blood tears was taken from his father by Priest Aldian, due to his inability to pay back a loan. In the process of his father trying to fight back to keep the heritage of his family, he is killed. The high-ranking priest and the ringleaders of the economic crisis that happened at the time deceived many investors, including Ned's father, into buying useless financial products. This caused all the investors to lose all their money, forcing them to the streets. Since then, Ned stayed alive to avenge the death of his father, searching all over the world for the blood tears. He finds it difficult to believe when Zephyr tells him the sword is with his master. Ned begins to think that his master has been deceiving him, and he is confused about what to do next. They both, alongside the other raid party members, head to the tomb of the abominable princess to begin the dungeon raid. Meanwhile, at the Temple of Light, Bishop Alfonso Giornetti, the head priest of Temple of Light's third parish, meets priest Aldian Lasker, a demon god worshipper. The raid party members begin to combat demon skeletons in the dungeon. Suddenly, a bone golem, made from a combination of hundreds of skeletons, appears. Lord Matthias manages to destroy it, but many more begin to appear as they are being controlled by the skeleton mage. If they must clear out the bone golems, they have to destroy the mage. They attempt to make their way to the mage, however, Captain Lucius steps in with the Spear of Brilliant Light and destroys all the bone golems, including the ancient tombstone which supplies magic power to the mage. The 8th floor is now cleared and they decide to set up camp there while they plan for the next day. Zephyr discovers secret access, the contraption he knew should be there, having seen it before in his past life. He activates it and the different parts of the dungeon start to move. But before that, something happened. At the gathering of the demon god worshippers, the day before the raid party members were announced, they all plan how they will steal the dragon heart during the dungeon raid. Matthias Grimmer tells them that Captain Lucius borrowed a legendary item called the Stake of Faith from the Pope. Since the gate to the boss room closes once the boss room is entered, Captain Lucius plans to stick the item between the doors so they can escape when necessary. The demon god worshippers are given the hypnosis ocarina to awaken Shoggoth to buy them more time while they escape. They are also provided with special drugs to temporarily disannul the effects of the slave's brand on them. Back to the present, Zephyr goes against the plan and awakens the Shoggoths before time to distract everyone while he aims to activate the contraption. He starts to run through the path created by the contraption, heading for the boss room. Captain Lucius tries to use the slave's brand, but it doesn't affect him. He then uses the Spear of Brilliant Light, but Zephyr evades it with one of his perks called Strong Luck. Ned follows after him as they had initially planned. Ned had discovered that all that Zephyr told him is true and has made his decision to work with him. He is quite angry that he has been deceived all his life by his master and seeks to destroy the Temple of Light and the demon god worshippers. As they run, they meet the gatekeeper of the boss room but manage to avoid his attack and slip in through a gap to the boss room before it closes. The boss appears and is surprised that they could avoid her night. Meanwhile, Captain Lucius is disturbed as he wonders why the slave's brand didn't work on Zephyr. He later discovers that there are lots of demon god worshippers in the party, and all the facts lead him to Matthias. Captain Lucius then approaches Matthias. The boss is Princess Eurydica, the owner of the tomb who killed her people 1,000 years ago. Ned falls for her illusion, thinking she is a serene and beautiful person and tries to go help her, but Zephyr holds him back. Then Ned discovers it was a trap to ensnare him and make him her prey. Princess Eurydica changes form and starts to attack them with a Dark Hand skill, which absorbs the stamina and magic power of her enemies. The god of loans, Uzra, is earnestly waiting to see Zephyr fail. Meanwhile, Matthias and the other demon god worshippers prepare to fight Captain Lucius. Matthias signals to his members with his fingers that they should drink this special drug that temporarily disannuls the effect of the slave's brand at the count of 3. However, Captain Lucius catches him off guard as he commands everyone to attack him before he could finish counting. They all face Matthias to attack him. Matthias kills them all, being very skilled, but Captain Lucius overpowers him and chains him with chains of light. However, Matthias resorts to using his last card, the Stone of Revelation, which then turns him into a demon. They try to attack him, but he is not affected. Captain Lucius then attempts to use the Spear of Brilliant Light to attack, but Matthias resists it. Lady Leona remembers the subspace case containing the Stake of Light, which was entrusted to her by Captain Lucius, and she tries to use it. Unfortunately, she discovers that it's been stolen from her. Ned took it along with him. At the boss room, Zephyr and Ned continue to combat Princess Eurydica until they finally cut her head off. However, the battle is not yet over. Eurydica starts to change form, the very moment they've been waiting for. A transformation process begins when the boss head is destroyed, and during this process, she can't move or use any skills. Ned unleashes the Stake of Faith weapon item and sends it toward her. The item begins to release its strong divine energy, causing damage to the boss. After a while, the stake of fate's ignition stops, which signifies that the enemy has been incapacitated. Suddenly, Georgius, the gatekeeper of the boss room, releases its mana, which combines with the incapacitated boss and revives her, changing her form. They try to attack her, but she is unaffected due to using the space distortion skill. She then tries to attack Ned, but Zephyr stops her by shooting out Spider Queen's web from his palm. Zephyr uses the reinforcement technique to draw her to himself, and Ned goes for an attack. However, Ned feels the effect of his slash on his body as Eurydice uses the Black Mirror magic, which reflects damages received by 300%. She then attacks Ned with the Dark Hand skill. Zephyr attacks her with the Thunderclap Palm technique and blocks the flow of her mana. Zephyr uses the item he bought from Lady White Rose, a rosary engraved with miracles. To save Ned from dying, however, Zephyr receives an attack from Eurydice which affects a lot of damage to him. Lady White Rose, back at the temple, suddenly feels that something might be wrong with Zephyr and wishes that she got him a higher capacity rosary. Zephyr, having used up all his items and weapons, is now defenseless against Eurydice. He considers which of his perks he can use, but discovers that none is the best fit. He then decides to do one last thing before he dies, if at all he would die. He starts to draw a symbol on the ground. The symbol is the proof that the gods lost disgracefully in the past, and any human who draws it receives divine punishment and dies. However, Zephyr is yet to complete the symbol before Angel Mercedes appears, asking him how he knows about the symbol. He requests that the gods pay him, thus getting the angel angry. She threatens to kill him with Zephyr, knowing that the gods need him alive so he could keep entertaining them, calls out to all the gods that they should give him more abilities, as there is no other human that can entertain them if he dies now. This gets the interest of Aria, the goddess of light, and she empowers him with the ability to use the Sword of Light. Zephyr launches an attack at Eurydice with a skill called Yahai Or, which means let there be light. The skill, having the highest grade curse removal effect, removes the curse placed on Eurydice, and she returns to her human form. She tells Zephyr the story of how it all happened. Georgius presented the dragon heart to her after he killed the black dragon. They used to love each other. Eurydice took the dragon heart to the last floor of the tomb, a great magic circle, to purify the curse on it. She used the magic circle's power to extend her life by 1,000 years till she finally succeeded in purifying the dragon heart. However, the curse eroded her and she lost her human form. Eurydice is grateful that Zephyr and his companion pulled her out of darkness and asks how she can repay them. She asks him why he wants the dragon heart, and Zephyr tells her to read his memories. Meanwhile, Captain Lucius continues to fight with Matthias. Matthias uses the demon race exclusive skill Seizure to retrieve the power of the branded worms from the remaining disguised demon god worshippers. He then attacks the Saints of Light, but Captain Lucius resists it. After Eurydice reads Zephyr's memories, he begs her to transplant the dragon heart into him, so he can win against the invasion of the demon race in the future. However, she declines. The black dragon Kaiserus used to be one of the 12 heroes that led the war against the demons, but he soon lost his sanity to become a great terror to humanity due to the demon curse. His comrades then had no choice but to turn against him. He was finally put down by a strike from Mag Georgius after a year-long intense fight. Georgius then sought to have the dragon heart transplanted into him, so he could have the power to protect the world. However, he also got infected by the demon curse, and Princess Eurydice had to painfully rip out the dragon heart from his chest with her hands. It happened that Gold Dragon had deceived them into thinking the demon curse had already been lifted from the dragon's heart. Eurydice purified the dragon heart for 1,000 years, waiting for a suitable hero who would receive it. She considers Zephyr to be worthy, but there is a challenge. Zephyr's body is not currently strong enough to contain the dragon's heart, and he could die or become crippled. Eurydice tells him the safest method is for him to take everything within her tomb to become stronger. She further tells him that he must hunt the other 4 dragons in 1 year after he gets the dragon heart transplant. Zephyr smiles and promises that he would achieve it in 6 months instead. Eurydice then prepares to begin the transplant. Zephyr activates the Strong Luck perk. Suddenly, he sees himself within his consciousness and feels the strong presence of the dragon heart's evil desire. Meanwhile, the battle is still on between demonized Matthias and the Saints of Light. Matthias kills Arno and Leona, St. Lucius' support in the battle, leaving St. Lucius as the only one left against him. St. Lucius launches many attacks, but Matthias doesn't even feel them. Matthias happens to possess a quick recovery ability that Lucius can't match, so he is getting weak. Lucius fires an attack at Matthias with multiple feathers, a skill called Glimpse of Glory. Matthias is shocked and Lucius tells him that he borrowed power from the angel he becomes in the future in exchange for his lifespan. This is an exclusive ability of the saints, and it's the reason they don't live long. Matthias eventually dies. Back in the boss's room, Ned wakes from his unconsciousness and wonders why everywhere is quiet. He is shocked when he sees the boss using her magic on Zephyr, who is lying on the floor. Lucius revives his two partners, Arno and Leona, and he tells them that they all return to the temple. Meanwhile, Zephyr, still within his consciousness, tries as much as possible to protect his spirit from being devoured by the dragon spirit. Ned wonders what's happening and thinks Zephyr was defeated. He sees this as an opportunity to attack, but before he could do anything, Eurydice tells him to get back to rest. She then expels the fragment of evil left in his body, causing him to vomit the branded worm he swallowed when he was in the demon god cult. Ned is confused and wonders why the boss is helping him. Still in the dungeon, Lucius and his partners can't seem to find the way out even after 3 days, since the dungeon has been restructured from the contraption. Lucius then tells them they need to find the Stake of Faith instead, as it's the only way they can escape in time. They head towards the boss room where Zephyr and Ned are, but soon get surprised to see the gatekeeper still there. Lucius wonders how Zephyr and Ned managed to enter the boss room. The gatekeeper attempts to kill Lucius, who is now helpless, but Zephyr shows up. He then uses the Dragon Tongue skill to command the gatekeeper to bow. That suggests one thing, right? The transplant was successful. The Dragon Tongue lasts only 10 seconds, since Zephyr just obtained the power, and it would require time to reach its full potential. The gatekeeper then grabs his sword, Graham, which was built for destroying even the strongest dragons, and he prepares to fight Zephyr. However, Zephyr uses the Sword of Light, based on Goddess Aria's request to save her saints. He uses the Yahai or skill, the same he used for the Eurydice, freeing Georgius also of the demon curse. Lucius, seeing all these, soon bows to Zephyr and begins, calling him the Exalted One. Zephyr's battle with Kaiserus within his consciousness lasted 3 days, and by the time he opened his eyes, he met Ned still unconscious and Eurydice, already turned to ash. Eurydice left him 2 keepsakes, the Crystal of Magic and the Master Key to Eurydice's tomb. St. Lucius is grateful to Zephyr and Ned and sets them free by removing the slave brand on their shoulders. Zephyr then tells them about the 3rd parish of the Temple of Light, which is now full of demon god worshippers, brought by Aldi and Lasker, and what they must do to fight them. They all go to Eurydice's treasure room where all of her valuable relics are kept. Lucius brings up the challenge they have with identifying demon god worshippers, which would mean that if they don't have any evidence showing that Aldian belongs to the demon god cult, they can't arrest him. Zephyr sees the potion of scrutiny among the relics in the treasure room, which helps to see the branded worms in demon god worshippers after it is applied to the eyes. Meanwhile, in the Temple of Light, Aldian is with St. Lucius' wife and baby. He finishes brainwashing Reverend Alfonso and begins to tell Sister Claudia, Lucius' wife, how each branded worm in demon god worshippers possesses a special ability once it achieves complete metamorphosis. His own worm's ability is Hive, which creates larvae that helps him to brainwash anyone if ingested. After a while, Lucius arrives and starts to attack the priests of the parish, having applied the potion of scrutiny to his eyes. He tells Aldian that he can come to arrest him for acts of heresy. Reverend Alfonso appears, asking St. Lucius for evidence for the accusations against Aldian. Lucius presents some letters he got from Mattai's base containing Aldian's plot to seize the dragon heart and also his acts of worship to the demon god. Aldian is left with no other choice than to reveal himself. He then grabs Sister Claudia and threatens to kill her. As he tries to feed her with one of his worms, Ned walks stealthily behind him without anyone detecting him, even with the detection skill, thanks to the mist bracelet he got from Eurydice's treasure room, and slashes him with a sword. However, Aldian recovers quickly and wonders how all of them managed to get out alive from the dungeon. Fearing that St. Lucius could use the Glimpse of Glory skill, Aldian quickly escapes, leaving Castor, one of the 10 continents' strongest men, to handle the rest. People from outside the temple's main building start to wonder what is happening as they see smoke rise from it. Some think that the knights are training, but Lady White Rose doubts it, as she has been warned by Zephyr earlier on not to set her floor in the main building. The battle continues in the temple and Lucius fights against Castor. After a series of exchanges, Lucius finally uses the judgment skill and severely wounds Castor. However, Castor begins to recover quickly with the aid of the branded worms. Castor suddenly hears Aldean calling to him using the skill Queen's message, through which the holder of the Queen's worm can transmit their voice and location to the holder of the Princess Worm. Aldean is in danger as he faces Zephyr while he tries to escape. The Saints of Light stop Castor from going to rescue his master. They had planned to hold him down and keep them separated. Before he meets Zephyr while he escapes, he wonders how all his great plans failed and finally concludes that the demon god cult leader betrayed him. As he tries to enter his carriage, he touches a deadly poison that was planted by the door of the carriage, and he screams out in pain. Zephyr then reveals himself. Aldean tries calling his other knight, Biluxi, with skill Queen's message, but Zephyr shocks him when he shows him the knight's helmet. He begins to think of the many tragedies that Aldean caused in his past life, and he determines to kill him right here and now. He strikes Aldean over and over with his sword but soon discovers that Aldean isn't affected. Then, Aldean turns into his demonification form. Meanwhile, St. Lucius and Castor continue to fight. Lucius uses the shooting star gem, which reduces Castor's speed, coupled with the chains of light, to cause serious damage to Castor. However, Castor's body regenerates, though his worms are almost used up, so he needs Aldean to replenish them. Due to the effect of Lucius' attack, the temple's buildings begin to crack and are on the verge of collapsing. That has been Castor's plan anyway. Castor decides to use this distraction to escape to go meet Aldean, but as he runs, unexpectedly, Ned slashes him in half with the Mirage sword. Castor advises Ned to leave if he wants to live, but gets compelled to fight when he sees his twin brother's moon sword with him. Demonified Aldean is surprised that Zephyr is still holding up well after his various attacks. Zephyr launches an attack on Aldean with the Dragon King style sword technique, but Aldean keeps regenerating as soon as he is cut. He tells Zephyr that he plans to make him one of his subordinates, since Zephyr is a very skilled warrior. Aldean delivers a huge blow on Zephyr, but Zephyr isn't even affected. Aldean is surprised at how a mere human can be fine after receiving such an attack. Zephyr then decides to go dragon mode and attacks Aldean. Aldean gets scared. Meanwhile, Castor has overpowered Ned and tries to kill him with the moon sword, but Ned remembers the secret Zephyr told him on how to defeat the Twin Knights. Zephyr told him that his role is very crucial in killing the Twin Knights. As Castor and Ned fight each other, Ned creates Eclipse, the secret of the Twin Knights, and successfully strikes Castor with the moon sword. Castor is shocked at how Ned knows the secret that only Aldean was supposed to know. Aldean calls on Castor to save him, but he doesn't listen. He is so bent on killing Ned because of his brother Pollux. Ned sees this as his chance to kill Castor, and then uses the crow cape to teleport behind before using the thunderclap technique on him. He attempts to give a final strike, but Castor blocks it with his sword, and then both swords stick together, the sun and moon sword. Then Castor overpowers Ned and is about to kill him. Ned remembers the promise he made to his father to become a great knight that befits the blood tears, and he suddenly becomes more powerful. He punches Castor's sword away and uses the thunderclap technique on his face. Castor goes blind from the lightning. Then Ned makes a final attack with Thunderbolt, thus defeating him. Zephyr and Ned return with Sister Claudia and her son. At this point, they have stopped Aldean's plot and reclaimed the Third Parish Temple. They eventually arrest and wipe out all the demon god worshippers that have been hiding for years. Zephyr presents Aldean's head to Priest Alfonso in Memora's birdcage, which he says would be instrumental in extracting useful information from Aldean since he is a demon god cult executive. Zephyr starts to tell Lucius and Alfonso the information they've gotten from Aldean about the demon god cults plan to destroy and reconstruct the world with the Eastern Union's support. They reveal how the demon god worshippers have been using the blue and ice dragons, 2 of the 8 challenges of the world, to destroy the Western territories, and if the dragons are left alone, the South will soon be destroyed also. They have to hunt down these dragons for the problem to be over, which Zephyr and Ned take on as a mission. St. Lucius names Zephyr and Ned as senior temple knights with access to all territories that the Temple of Light's religious influence reaches. Suddenly, they hear a sound from the cage. The demon cult's leader appears. Ned and St. Lucius seek to prevent the demon cult's leader from taking the dragon heart, so they decide to face him so Zephyr can escape, and to stop him, they must destroy Aldean's head. The demon cult's leader activates the skill Ancient Dragon's shadow captures both of them and makes them unable to use their mana and skills. He then activates the Ring of Curses on them, causing pain, disease, and decomposition. Zephyr activates Yahai, or using the Sword of Light, to stop the effect of the Ring of Curses. Zephyr thinks that he must avoid a head-on battle with the demon cult's leader, else the damage will be great. He comes up with an idea instead that they make a bet. The loser tells the winner one thing they want to know, and also if he wins, he will reveal the demon cult's leader's identity. The demon cult's leader gets shocked to know that Zephyr knows his real identity after he uses his mana detection skill to find out if Zephyr is telling the truth or not. He agrees to the bet anyway. The game naturally should favor the first person who speaks, since they both can follow the movement of the coin with their eyes and accurately predict the result. However, they maneuver the outcome using the strength of their mana, and the one who successfully crushes the opponent's interference wins, but the outcome eventually turns out to be a draw. They then postpone the match to another time and use the Oath Ring skill to bind a promise between themselves to prevent Zephyr from revealing the demon cult's leader's real identity. Zephyr tries to find a countermeasure for the skill but can't, so he decides to reveal it indirectly through a riddle or a hint. Meanwhile, the demon cult's leader is surprised that Zephyr has not yet revealed his identity and wonders if he was just making a bluff or has another ambition entirely. He presents a gift to alter Justina Kayan, Kayan Kingdom's first princess, on her 20th birthday. The demon cult's leader is Polaris Albert Kayan, Kayan Kingdom's first prince. Their opponent is more powerful than they can handle. Nevertheless, Ned and Lucius are ready to fight, no matter how difficult it is, till they win. Zephyr is still trying to figure out why the demon cult's leader appeared earlier, but suddenly the silver key perk shines, calling his attention. He goes to the room of the silver key to see Angel Mercedes. She had already told him she has a message for him. She tells him that there is an addition of rules and rewards to his perks. The restriction on the Sword of Light's usage has been eased. Also, a new rule has been given. He must carry out the requests of the gods, and additional perks will be given to him for completing the requests. After, Zephyr and Ned leave the Third Parish Temple on the Dragon Raid mission, while St. Lucius stays back to secure the temple, and to pretend that he has the dragon heart so that Zephyr can carry out his mission. Eurydice's and Georgia's souls then return to where they are meant to be while leaving her role to the one who inherited the mission, Zephyr, and her descendant, Altair. Altair receives a letter from Lucius congratulating her on her 20th birthday and presenting Zephyr as a gift to be the strength she had always desired. Ned and Zephyr enter Lindell Castle, the territory given to Altair. They are surprised to see a queue of warriors, said-be suitors, vying to be Altair's husband. The right of succession to the throne was handed to her when Prince Polaris Albert Kayan decided to give up his right and become a priest of light. Since then, people have been fighting to become her husband, so they could become the next king. However, she said that if anyone must become her husband, they must prove their strength by defeating Ophelia Amleth, Altair's first guardian knight, and also one of the continent's strongest 10. Altair comes to meet them and asks what they can do for her. Altair's communion skill hasn't developed yet, so she can't read someone's memories at will like Eurydice. However, she uses her talent to screen people and gather comrades to oppose the demon god worshippers. Even her ridiculous search for a groom is bait to gather the strong who she can trust. Zephyr, answering the question of what they can do for her, shows her the power of the dragon. Altair is shocked, and she tells Ophelia to have a match with Zephyr, in which Zephyr beats her in 3 bouts. Zephyr offers to deliver the blue dragon's head in a month if everything goes as planned. He then gives Altair one of the keepsakes Eurydice gave him, the Crystal of Magic, which will help her become the strongest ally once she absorbs it, and also will be able to smoothly tune the dragon heart. Zephyr and Ned then take their leave. Altair finds Zephyr amusing and sees him as one who would become a key to her plans. She then tells Ophelia about feeling something strange when Zephyr touched her earlier. She saw both of them joining hands together with a lot of energy flowing out. Meanwhile, the demon cult's leader tells his vice that he should find a new candidate to replace Aldian's position amongst the 12 apostles, and should continue with the apocalypse plan without fail. Altair is touched to have received the Crystal of Magic that she had desperately needed to develop her magic that had been stagnant at level 2. She starts to meditate while she holds it and soon sees Eurydice's remnant appear to her. Meanwhile, Zephyr and Ned plan to go to the party being held at Lindell Castle. They are both going to gather information. Zephyr will be at the party while Ned will stealthily search for demon god worshippers. Ned wears the two mist bracelets so he can move stealthily and not be detected by Ophelia. Zephyr then uses the transfiguration skill to transform his face so he won't be recognized at the party. At the party, everyone is talking about the princess and the result of Luqua's raid as Zephyr expected, but no one really knows what happened with the raid or Aldean. One of the party guests sees Zephyr and recognizes him instantly despite the transfiguration skill, and Zephyr wonders who he is. At the same time, Ned is killing the demon god worshippers he finds around the party without getting noticed. He steps out and after a while, Ophelia catches him. She had been tailing him anyway. She then tells Ned that he also needs to prove his strength like Zephyr did. At the vicinity of the Third Parish Temple, the demon cult's vice leader investigates all that happened with Aldean. He speculates that the Eastern One or the Saint took the Dragon Heart implant, and that the Third Parish is blocked because they are trying to buy time to allow the Dragon Heart's power stabilize after implantation. So she plans to act fast to obtain evidence before the Dragon Heart implantation is complete. Then she sees a strange person nearby and feels the person is related to the situation. She pursues and almost captures her, but she escapes using the Thunderclap palm. The demon cult's vice leader then discovers it's an Eastern One's disciple. Meanwhile, Ned and Ophelia are still fighting. Ned feels there's discrimination, since they haven't stopped even after fighting way more than 3 bouts as she did with Zephyr. Ophelia tells Ned about the shadow disciple of the Eastern One of the 12 apostles, a smiling woman, a master of transfiguration. She was preventing her from joining the Dragon Heart raid, but the shadow disciple slipped from her hand, and now Ned and Zephyr show similarities with her in their fighting techniques. However, the princess already verified Zephyr, but Ophelia still doubts Ned, telling him he shares a resemblance with the smiling woman, as if they are related by blood. Ned then remembers Aldean telling him not to trust Zephyr. Aldean said it was he who sent him to the Eastern One to raise him when he lost his family and the children of other bankrupt families suffered. Ned is shocked to know that his sister, who he thought was dead, is alive, and is the Eastern Shadow Disciple, which contradicts what Zephyr told him about being the Shadow Disciple when they met. In the party hall, Zephyr finishes talking to the man that saw through his transfiguration, Philip Pilgrim, Altair's comrade and merchant. According to his previous life, Philip Pilgrim is one of Altair's 3 mentors, which led to her becoming a pivotal figure of humanity. So he became a high-priority target of the demon god cult and was killed by the Shadow Disciple. Zephyr now has the mission to prevent Philip from dying and to stop the smiling woman, which would be difficult since she can change into any form she desires. Zephyr returns only to meet Ned angry and asking for the truth. Zephyr is shocked to discover that the Shadow Disciple is Ned's sister. He reveals that he was Ned's only disciple who returned to the past with memories of 10 years into the future. Ned finds it difficult to believe all Zephyr told him, but seeing what Zephyr has done and how much information he knows, it makes so much sense. Zephyr apologizes and tells him that he needs him to fight the demon god again. They visit merchantry leader Philip's group to continue the planning towards the dragon's raid. However, the princess is absent. Zephyr infers that it's due to the crystal of magic, which causes the user to sleep so its magic incantations confuse with the brain. Days pass by as they make several preparations for the dragon raid. Then the princess wakes up from her long sleep and calls for Zephyr and Ned. The crystal of magic contained a remnant of Eurydica, and Zephyr wonders if she told the princess something about him. She wakes up after sleeping for a week, however, she can't remember all that Eurydica told her. Zephyr extends his hand for her to read his memories, but she says she can't use the communion skill, yet as she hasn't reached the level required. She tells Zephyr she thought he gave her the crystal of magic to show her his ability so he could join her party, but it was rather to raise her for his plan. She asks Zephyr to convince her of his plans for the dragon raid, and Zephyr brings out his extensive plan from the Silver Key. A few days later, they head to the Danakil Plains, which used to be the continent's largest granary, but became the nest of the Blue Dragon. They head to the medical relief station and find a knight named Sir Grimes who got poisoned trying to fight the monsters. They are supposed to meet him, but he can't talk with them as the dragon's poison has circulated through his body. Zephyr decides to do something about it using deadly poison needles. Meanwhile, Captain Regulus arrives and tells Philip that he isn't pleased with the sudden letter they sent to his father, Lord Danakil, requesting troops to support in the dragon raid, which is supposed to be executed a year later, under the condition that the Saint of Light discovers the dragon heart. He doesn't see it fitting to start a raid yet. He suddenly hears a noise from inside the station and goes in to check what's happening. He He sees needles stuck in Sir Grimes' body and attempts to stop Zephyr, thinking he is harming him. However, Ophelia prevents him, and he bows when he discovers that the princess is also present. Altair introduces Zephyr as the exalted one sent by Goddess Aria to save the saint who was in danger and the entire world, while showing a letter written to her by Street Lucius. Due to this, the party members at the relief station accepted Zephyr as the operation commander without much issue. Zephyr treats all the poisoned patients in the relief station, but they must create an antidote as fast as possible before the poison starts spreading again, of which the ingredients can only be acquired at the Great Elfin Forest. Zephyr knows the forest to devour humans enraptured by its beauty, so he tells Ned to protect Philip as an ambush might come at any time. Suddenly, a face appears at the door of the forest and threatens them to go back. The princess tries to converse with it, but the elves soon start to attack them. Zephyr protects the princess with the Dragon Slayer's cape, and the healer captain uses the Barrier of Light skill to block the attacks. Zephyr then commands the door of the forest to open using the Dragon Tongue skill. Suddenly, an elf shoots an arrow at him. It's the elf he's been expecting, the divine archer, Dariel, one of the continent's strongest 10. Dariel fires another arrow at him, and he deflects it, which shocks Elf Kara, and makes her wonder if it's a coincidence or not. However, Zephyr is already injured from the first arrow, and Kara orders Dariel to fire another arrow at him with an even stronger skill. Dariel uses the Crimson Meteor skill, which enhances the arrows to be 3 times faster and stronger. Zephyr then decides to also go all out by using the Dragon King style. The traces of his sword become a dragon and surge upward, destroying the arrows. Kara becomes scared that they can't fight against him, not knowing if he is a dragon or human since they had already lost a lot of people to the Blue Dragon. She then surrenders to him and pleads for his help. After a while, High Elf Elder Heron speaks with Zephyr and introduces Dariel and Kara, also as High Elves. A High Elf is a Dominator-class elf that possesses great power. They have pupils with a unique pattern, which indicates an innate special power. Elder Heron tells Zephyr about Fade, another human who also entered the forest at a time and used very uncommon poisons and needles just like him. Zephyr happened to have learned the poison production methods and needle arts from Fade's old guild comrade. Well, the ones who were poisoned by the Blue Dragon have been kept alive by the deadly poison that Fade left, but it has almost run out, which left the elves with no other choice than to give it only to the more important ones while they abandon the rest. Zephyr coming at this time of the crisis is a stroke of luck for them. However, Elder Heron is not actually loyal to the Elf Queen, but has an ulterior motive to use Zephyr to obtain the Queen's final seal box, which he has always desired, for himself so he can build a new kingdom with its power, and become a king as some high elves did in the past. Meanwhile, Altair's servant, Lady Katie, a master impersonator, disguises himself as the princess in the south, while Altair and Zephyr progress with the Blue Dragon raid preparations to deceive the demon god worshippers. After eradicating the monsters surging from the magic flora plant, Zephyr requests for the branch of the Tree of Life and the Water of Life, but Dariel turns him down. He says the items Zephyr has requested are the key items protecting the village from contamination. Zephyr, getting uneasy, makes it clear to him that he'd slay the dragon, so he doesn't have to be worried about the village's safety. However, Dariel, still doubting, tells him to prove it to him in a duel. Dariel shoots an arrow at Zephyr, but it doesn't penetrate Zephyr's scales. He then asks Zephyr how he expects him to combat a real dragon when his arrows can't even penetrate a dragonoid's scales. Dariel desires to kill the dragon too, but is afraid that he may be too weak. Zephyr decides to make a new weapon for him. Dariel then prepares the Water of Life and the branch of the Tree of Life for him, telling him it's the last glass there is of the Water of Life. Zephyr drinks the Water of Life, and immediately he starts to overflow with vitality, which further increases as he activates Perk 2, Arcanum of Herm's skill. He then activates Dragonification, which increases the dragon's heart output, and Microcosmic Orbit, which is used to circulate mana. The battle against the Blue Dragon cannot be handled with a human body, so he needs to raise the duration and level of Dragonification as fast as possible, and this can only be achieved through the Water of Life. Altair then uses Morai magic to tune Zephyr's mana and pump it into the Dragon Heart. The Dragon Heart output starts to increase but soon begins to drop drastically till Ned comes in to support him, also being a Dragon-style master. The cultivation process gets completed. The Dragon Heart output has now greatly increased, and Zephyr's form is changed. Zephyr then begins to rip out his scales to use for Dariel's weapon. From the combination of the different materials, including the dragon scales, the black dragon longbow, and the black dragon arrow are created. 2 weeks until the raid, they make a lot of preparations, creating weapons, making golem cores, and constructing and strengthening the fort. While Zephyr continues to use the power of the dragon heart over and over to increase its spread throughout his body. He desires to raise the dragon heart output to 19%, where he can maintain dragonification for 28 minutes, which would give him a chance against the blue dragon. On the night before the raid, Zephyr returns to his room early so he can get a long sleep. However, Altair enters unexpectedly and kisses him with the Kiss of Darkness, a skill which causes the subject kissed to fall under mind control and be made to confess. She is surprised that all the plans she's been having difficulty with fell into place within 1 month of meeting him. She wants to know what Zephyr's true intention is and who sent him. Zephyr confesses that he is doing it because of her. She died for him in his past life, so he came back to the past to change that future. Altair finds this unbelievable, but since he is under the effect of the Kiss of Darkness, she knows he isn't lying. Meanwhile, Elder Heron goes secretly to modify and add a few characters to the golems after Millie and Daisy have finished inspecting them, so that the golems will listen to only his orders. On the day of the raid, the mages all gather to activate strengthening spells on Zephyr before the raid commences. Well, Zephyr from the night before promised Altair to clear all obstacles on her path, defeat all her enemies, and offer her the throne while she accepts him as her king. Then the Blue Dragon raid commences. Will Zephyr change the future and be with the princess again? If you like content like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe.